You have been taught that success will save you, that once you reach your goal, the ache will subside, that the hunger tearing at your insides will at last be fed. And so you strive. You sacrifice sleep, time, years of your life, all for that moment of arrival. And then it comes. You hold the trophy. You sign the deal. You stand beside the one you thought would complete you. And in that moment, perhaps not at first, but soon enough, you feel it. The emptiness, the silence, the quiet knowledge that this is not what you were truly seeking. You feel no peace, only a deeper hunger dressed in new clothing. You suffer now not because you failed, but because you succeeded. Because the illusion has broken, and what remains beneath the ruins of your ambition is a question most men dare not ask. Why do I still feel unsatisfied? Why does the prize taste like ash? And if this too has failed to save me, what will? The answer, though cruel, is simple. Nothing. Nothing you achieve will ever satisfy you. Not because you lack the right goal, not because you failed to try hard enough, but because satisfaction itself, lasting, total, permanent, is an illusion crafted by the will to keep you moving. You are not a man on a journey to peace. You are a creature of endless longing, a vessel through which the will operates. And the will does not desire satisfaction. It desires continuation. Every goal you've ever had was not yours. It was a mask worn by the will, whispering to you, if you have this, you will be whole. But the will has no interest in wholeness. It wants only motion. The moment you arrive, it plants a new seed of lack. You climb one hill and immediately see another. You lie in the arms of the woman you once dreamed of, and already your thoughts drift. You step into the home you once longed for, and already you are calculating the next improvement. This is not your failure. This is the structure of existence. I do not tell you this to depress you. I tell you this so you may finally understand why your life has felt like an endless chase, why every victory quickly fades, why every goal once reached becomes invisible. You were not meant to be fulfilled. You were meant to serve the will. And the will in its blind hunger ensures that you are always just a little unsatisfied, always just a little restless, always just a little broken, so that you will keep moving, keep producing, keep chasing shadows across the desert of time. But here, if you are brave enough, the chase can end. Not by attaining more, but by seeing through the game. If you have begun to suspect that every reward is empty, every climax short-lived, every promise false, then you are not failing, you are awakening. You are stepping out of the dream and into the desert. It is dry here, it is quiet, but it is real. And in time you may come to prefer the truth of the desert to the intoxication of the dream. You are not here to be fulfilled, you are here to see. And once you see that nothing you achieve will ever satisfy you, you may begin, for the first time, not to suffer blindly, but to suffer with understanding. And in that understanding there is something stronger than success. There is freedom. You must understand what governs your life. Not ideas, not morals, not reason. The force that moves you is older than thought, deeper than feeling, and utterly indifferent to your peace. It is the will to live, the blind, ceaseless striving that underlies everything. It pulses in the roots of trees, in the blood of beasts, in the panic of man. It does not ask why. It does not ask what is enough. It only wants. And through you it continues its ancient motion. When you imagine yourself pursuing your goals, you may think you are acting freely, that you are choosing, planning, building your life through intellect and desire. But the truth is harsher. Your goals are only temporary disguises for the will's single aim: continuation. The will does not care what you pursue, only that you remain in pursuit, and it achieves this by placing lack in your chest and showing you 1,000 forms of supposed completion. Success, love, power, respect. But each one, once reached, fades, not because it is flawed, but because it was never meant to fulfill you, only to keep you in motion. You may say, but I have agency. I set goals and reach them. Yes. But have you noticed that the moment a goal is attained, your mind shifts to another? that the triumph lasts only long enough for a new longing to arise? This is not coincidence. It is structure. The will cannot rest, and so it ensures that you cannot either. What you call motivation is its leash around your throat. What you call ambition is its whisper in your blood. It is not cruel. It is not kind. It simply is, a force without eyes or mind, a compulsion rooted in the very nature of life. The animal flees the predator, the man flees his own reflection, each movement dictated by the will. You are not exempt because you think. The intellect is not your master, it is the servant of the will. Its function is to find more clever ways to chase the same things: safety, sex, success. The same fruit arranged in more elaborate patterns. And because the will does not care for peace, peace always eludes you. Even when life is quiet, something stirs. A restlessness, a vague discontent, a desire for something new, and so you move again. You call it growth, evolution, becoming. But in truth, it is repetition. The wheel turns and the face of desire changes, but the structure remains. Always lack, always longing, always hunger dressed in new names. To see this is to understand why nothing you achieve will ever be enough, because the will not allow it. You were not born to be satisfied. You were born to serve the machinery of continuation. But once you understand this, truly see it, you can begin to resist. Not by stopping desire, but by no longer believing it. You can begin to observe the motion without obeying it. You can begin to say, "I see you," instead of "I must follow." And that is the first step toward stillness, not external but internal. You will not escape the will entirely, but you can begin to unmask it. And in doing so, you reclaim something rare in this world. Not pleasure, not achievement, but clarity. Every man walks with a fantasy in his mind, a future moment in which everything will make sense, a moment when the noise will stop, the ache will fade, and life will finally feel complete. He imagines that once he has the title, the partner, the wealth, the recognition, then he will rest. But that moment never arrives, and if by chance something like it does, it dissolves almost as quickly as it appeared. What was once glowing with promise becomes gray and inert. The hunger he thought would vanish begins to stir again. He has reached the mirage and found it empty. This is the great lie of achievement, that there is peace on the other side, that the object of your desire contains within it the power to silence the will. But fulfillment is not an event. It is an illusion projected onto the future by a mind enslaved to desire. The longing feels profound, purposeful, even sacred, but its target is arbitrary. What you truly seek is not the object, it is the end of longing itself. But because the will cannot end, neither can that longing. And so your fantasies keep shifting. The closer you come to them, the more you realize they were never real. You think you want the car, the house, the lover, the acclaim. But what you really want is to no longer feel empty, to no longer feel restless, to no longer suffer the tension of becoming. But this is something the world cannot offer, because the world does not exist to fulfill you. It exists to keep you moving. The future you dream of is not a place of arrival, it is bait. Designed not by a divine architect, but by a blind will whose only concern is that you do not stop. And the mind, poor servant of this master, helps to sustain the illusion. It creates images, goals, and narratives to make the hunger feel meaningful. It tells you, you were born to do this, or this achievement will define you. But these are not truths. They are scripts, and you recite them not because they are real, but because they numb the pain of not knowing why you are here. They give shape to suffering, but they do not remove it. If you've ever reached a goal and felt the strange emptiness that follows, the anticlimax, the flatness, the dull return of ordinary life, then you have already glimpsed this truth, and perhaps you panicked. Perhaps you told yourself that you had aimed too low, that you must set your sights higher. So you recalibrated the fantasy, raised the stakes, built a new future moment to pursue. And again, the chase continued. Not because you were growing, but because you were trapped. The wise man does not condemn ambition. He simply ceases to be seduced by it. He knows that fulfillment cannot be possessed, only imagined. That every new longing is a continuation of the same disease. And so he watches desire arise without chasing it. He walks without needing to arrive. He lives not for the prize, but with the knowledge that there is none. Only motion, only repetition, only the will behind all things disguised in golden masks. To see through the mirage is not to become passive. It is to stop being fooled, to act without illusion, to choose your direction knowing that no destination will bring you salvation. This is not despair. It is freedom from despair. Because once you stop believing that peace lies in the next thing, you begin to taste something deeper. Awareness unchained from hope. A life lived not in pursuit but in perception. You suffer when you don't have what you want, and you suffer again once you have it. This is the pendulum of life, swinging between pain and boredom, the pain of desire unmet, and the boredom that follows its fulfillment. One compels you to act, the other leaves you restless. Between them there is no lasting rest, and yet most live their lives being dragged by this motion, mistaking it for progress. When the will is denied, it hurts. You feel lack, urgency, frustration. This is the pain of unfulfilled craving. It consumes the body, infects the thoughts, clouds the spirit. It convinces you that relief lies just ahead, if only you can achieve, obtain, or win what you do not yet have. And so you move, you hustle, you chase. The world applauds your striving. It calls you driven, ambitious, hungry. But it does not see that beneath your energy lies a gnawing agony. Then comes the reward. The craving is satisfied. For a moment there is silence, but only for a moment, because the will, now fed, grows quiet, not content. It does not know how to rest, it only knows how to resume. And in the space between one desire and the next, boredom enters, a weightless kind of suffering, a grayness, a silence that feels oppressive instead of serene. This is not peace. It is the body waiting for the next command from the will. This is why even the richest, the most powerful, the most admired, those who have every reason to be satisfied, often feel a strange restlessness. They do not suffer from lack, but from abundance. And in abundance, the will has nothing urgent to chase. So it waits, it grows bored, it begins to whisper of new longings, something different, something more. And thus the pendulum swings again. The man who was once starving now finds himself overfed and yet hollow. There is no balance, no middle ground. There is only the arc, from the fire of hunger to the fog of boredom and back again. You may try to pause it with distractions, with comfort, with ideology. But it resumes. It always resumes. Because the will is not satisfied by solutions. It is not trying to reach a destination. It only knows how to keep moving and how to keep you moving with it. Understand this clearly. The pain of striving is not cured by achieving. It is only transformed into another kind of discomfort. And the boredom that follows is not harmless. It is the breeding ground of new craving, new delusions, new attachments. This is how men return to the chase, not because they found meaning, but because they could not bear the stillness. To break this pendulum, one must step back, not physically but inwardly, to stop believing that action will bring peace or that silence must be filled. The wise man watches the swing and does not cling to either side. He neither flees pain nor fears boredom. He does not react. He observes. He detaches. And in doing so, he begins, not to stop the will, but to stop obeying it. This is not easy. It is not glamorous, but it is possible. And in that quiet resistance, you may discover a new strength, not in conquest, not in excitement, but in calm. The calm of one who no longer rides the pendulum, but stands beside it, watching. No one envies the man who fails, but few understand the deeper tragedy of the man who succeeds. For he has done everything the world asked of him. He has conquered the mountain, built the empire, married the muse, earned the applause, and yet he stands at the summit and feels nothing. Or worse, he feels the weight of hollowness that can no longer be ignored. The climb gave him purpose. The dream gave him meaning. But now that the dream is real, it reveals its lie. This is the moment no one prepares you for, the moment after victory, when the crowd has gone quiet, when the rewards sit in your hands and you realize they are incapable of touching your soul. The successful man does not suffer because he lacks. He suffers because he believed that having would heal him. He suffers because his illusions were the most elaborate, and now he has nothing left to project them onto. He is praised, admired, even envied. But inside he knows the truth. He has everything he once longed for, and still the ache persists. The hunger remains. The restlessness continues. His friends tell him to enjoy it, to be grateful. But gratitude cannot silence the will. It may soothe the surface, but the deeper motion, endless, blind, insatiable, keeps pulsing. He thought he was running toward peace, but peace was never there. It was a mirage conjured by the chase. Worse still, he can no longer return to the illusion. The man who fails can still fantasize. He can say, "If only I had succeeded, I would be happy." But the man who succeeds has no such refuge. He knows the prize is dust. He cannot lie to himself anymore, and so he drifts, sometimes toward distraction, sometimes toward despair. He fills the void with more goals, more lovers, more noise, but none of it reaches the place that remains untouched. This is why so many successful men quietly unravel. They build more not because they are hungry for creation, but because they are terrified of what stillness will reveal. The applause becomes their sedative, the motion becomes their escape, but it cannot last. Sooner or later the lights dim, the show ends, and in the silence that follows they must face what success has taken from them. The illusion of becoming. The truth is, success is not salvation, it is exposure. It reveals that the ladder you were climbing was not leaning against a wall of peace, but against a wall that disappears the moment you reach it. The higher you climb, the deeper the fall into clarity. Not because you have lost something, but because you have lost the ability to believe that more will make it better. If you have not yet reached this point, listen closely. If you have, you already understand. The goal is not to succeed endlessly, but to see clearly. To stop pretending that achievement will soothe the will. It will not. Nothing you achieve will ever satisfy you, not because you are broken, but because you are awake. When a man begins to feel the emptiness of achievement, he rarely meets it with truth. He does not say, "Perhaps the structure of life itself is the problem." Instead, he says, "Perhaps I have chosen the wrong goal." And so he pivots. He shifts his hunger from one form to another, from career to romance, from ambition to spirituality, from distraction to addiction. Anything to avoid standing still long enough to feel what his striving has always concealed. That nothing he pursues can give him what he is looking for. Distraction is the most common form of escape. The man who can no longer find meaning in work turns to pleasure. He fills his hours with noise, stimulation, consumption. He travels, drinks, posts, scrolls. Not because he enjoys it, but because stillness terrifies him. In stillness, he feels the weight of purposelessness, the ache of unfulfilled longing that no screen can silence. And so he keeps moving, not forward, but away. Addiction is distraction refined to its purest form. It is the moment when the chase no longer even pretends to be about meaning. It is the bare craving for oblivion, for quiet, for escape, not from the world, but from the self who cannot stop wanting. Every drug, every compulsion, every self-destructive pattern is a misguided attempt to kill the will without knowing its name. The man does not want to feel pleasure. He wants to feel nothing, because nothing for a moment feels like relief. Then there is self-deception, the most dangerous of all. This is when the man builds a new illusion on the ashes of the old. He becomes spiritual, or philanthropic, or artistic, not out of clarity, but out of panic. He tells himself that this new path will redeem the old one, that helping others will save him, that love will now be pure, that silence will now bring truth. But he has not seen through the will. He has merely changed its costume. The will thrives on such conversions. It does not care what form your desire takes, only that it persists. You were chasing status, now you chase enlightenment. You were climbing the corporate ladder, now you are building a legacy of impact. But the hunger remains, the projection remains. And beneath the robes of your new identity, the same restlessness continues to pulse. These are not solutions, they are loops. They prolong the cycle, they make it more elegant, more socially acceptable, but no less enslaving. The man who truly sees does not seek a prettier illusion. He stops seeking altogether. He does not look for new ways to be fulfilled. He looks for ways to no longer obey the hunger. You will be told that this is pessimism, that to stop striving is to give up. But this is the lie of the will speaking. It wants you to believe that your value lies in motion, that to be still is to be lost. But the truth is the opposite. You were lost in movement, you were blind in pursuit. Stillness is not the absence of life, it is the first moment of clarity within it. If you are tired, not just physically, but metaphysically, then listen. Do not numb it, do not disguise it, do not spiritualize it, feel it, see it. And then ask, who would I be if I stopped chasing? What would remain if I no longer believed the next thing would save me? That question is not comfortable, but it is the beginning of freedom. At a certain point, the hunger itself begins to feel familiar. You have chased enough, you have achieved enough, you have failed enough. And though the content of your striving may shift, titles, relationships, possessions, the structure never does. Desire, pursuit, attainment, disappointment, repeat. Eventually, something within you no longer believes the voice that says, "This time, it will be different." The illusion begins to tremble, and then it breaks. You see the game, not just your game, but the whole game, the machinery of existence, the will behind all willing. You see how nature pushes everything forward without aim, how beauty is bait, how pleasure is a moment of relief between two waves of wanting. You see how people cling to hope, not because it is true, but because they cannot endure its absence. You see how every institution, every myth, every ritual is designed to disguise the terror of emptiness. And you see that you too were once a player, chasing phantoms, applauding others, begging the dream to mean something. This is the moment of metaphysical awakening, not a revelation of light, but of silence, a stripping away. You are no longer interested in goals, no longer moved by promises. You do not hate the game, you simply no longer wish to play. Others may call this apathy, but you know better. It is not that you feel less, it is that you see more, and what you see no longer requires your participation. This is where detachment begins, not as a technique, not as a strategy, but as a consequence of vision. You still act, still speak, still move through the world, but something in you no longer clings. You do not rush, you do not reach. You no longer wake up with a sense of incompletion because you have stopped believing that life is supposed to complete you. You are no longer waiting for meaning to arrive. You are watching meaning dissolve and learning to live in its absence. To see through the game is not to withdraw from life. It is to engage it without illusion. You work, but not to become worthy. You love, but not to be redeemed. You create, but not to be remembered. The will may still move through you, but you are no longer deceived by its disguises. You see it in others. You see it in yourself. And you walk with it, not obediently, but consciously. Most will never reach this point. Most will return to the chase. Their suffering will push them into new fantasies. They will call it growth, or healing, or purpose. But you, if you have seen the pattern, no longer need to rename the hunger. You simply stop feeding it. You watch it rise, you let it pass. You listen to the voice that says just one more thing, and you answer, "I've heard you before." This is not a glorious life. It is not filled with applause or trophies, but it is still. It is lucid. And in this stillness, you begin to experience a form of peace the strivers will never know. Not the peace of having everything, but the peace of no longer needing anything. The peace of seeing the game and choosing not to play. So now you've seen it. Or rather, you've begun to see. The structure behind the story. The will beneath the wanting. the pattern that no amount of success can disrupt. You no longer need to imagine that the next milestone will bring peace. You no longer need to pretend that achievement can deliver what it was never meant to give. And that quiet collapse within you, the one that first felt like failure, is in truth your liberation. You are not empty because something is missing. You are empty because you have stopped believing that fulfillment lies in what can be gained. And in that emptiness, if you dare not to run, there is space. Not for new illusions, but for stillness. The will may still whisper, the world may still tempt, but you, who have suffered not just through failure but through success, now understand. The chase is the lie. And your longing does not need to be healed, it needs to be seen for what it is. This seeing is rare, and it is costly, it separates you. You can no longer return to ordinary conversation, to shallow celebration, to dreams dressed in urgency. You are not bitter, but you are not deceived. You still act, but not to attain. You still speak, but not to be approved. You still move, but not to arrive. Life continues, but you no longer serve its illusions. And in that detachment, there is something more dignified than any triumph. There is truth. You will lose things as you walk this path. You will lose the comfort of goals, the warmth of naive hope, the camaraderie of the striving herd. But what you gain is clarity. And clarity is not loud. It does not shine. It does not promise anything. But it endures. When the noise fades, when the lights go out, clarity remains. It does not soothe, but it does not lie. And that, in a world built on lies, is its own kind of peace. If you've felt this, if you've tasted the emptiness of achievement and still had the strength to look deeper, then stay. Subscribe. Not because I offer hope, but because I do not. Not because I will teach you how to succeed, but because I will not lie to you about what success brings. And in the comments, tell me, what was the one thing you chased, achieved, and found hollow? The moment when your fantasy collapsed and the truth began to emerge. Speak not for attention, but for someone else who still believes that having more will finally make them whole. Let them read your words and feel less alone. Let them see in you the mirror they have feared to face. And perhaps through that reflection the cycle begins to break. For one more soul.